There are stories that your friends tell you after you have a couple, 2, 3 White Claws, or Screwball and Cokes, which are actually fantastic, by the way, if you're over the age of 21. If you're under the age of 21, I cannot legally tell you that they're good, all right? But there's stories that you just don't believe. The friend who beat a ZR1 in their stock 370Z, the first time a track car, drifted around an accident. Somebody's talking about how they're at Road America and drifted around an accident. Or someone who got their wheels, tires, and suspension from someone
besides FitmentIndustries.com.
You just don't believe it until you see the GoPro footage, and then you're like, wow, that was really underwhelming. Because for some reason, GoPro footage is extremely underwhelming, even though you felt like you were pretty much like Vin Diesel, all right? I'm Alex at Defy on Instagram, and in today's episode of we're gonna be talking about a story that plays out just a little bit too much like a Hollywood action movie. Like, quite literally, I think to myself, there's no way this is actually true, until it kind of sort of is, and it makes me sad again. A story that talks about none other than the rise and eventual fall of a now international fugitive. Oh, yeah, and if you're looking at subscribe. So you can keep making videos like this, and if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension, be sure to hit us up over at FitmentIndustries.com, where we have everything you little itsy bitsy, I can't do the words right now. We have actually Black Friday and Cyber Monday stuff too, and we have a whole month long of deals for the month of November, because we just didn't want to pile it all onto one day, because we do that and then I have a panic attack when I wake up on Saturday morning. Let's talk about a man named Carlos Ghosn. Carlos G, we're gonna call him. A man born in Brazil in 1954 and grew up through his college years in France before taking his first job at Michelin. Carlos was a man that was extremely intuitive and ingenuitive, and he wanted to just grow up and be the biggest and best. From there, and pretty much his entire business career, the man just grew, all right? Like Miracle grew. He took on a manufacturing facility at Michelin, and then it didn't take him long to then head up the research and development for Michelin. And once his clock struck the good old year of 30, he was already the chief operating officer of Michelin for South America. It was a pretty successful stint, considering it's pretty hard to move up in some of those big countries, and honestly, it's pretty neat. He'd then move over to become the COO of Michelin North America, which is essentially the worst region for League, just saying, and then became the CEO in a matter of months. The growth caught wind, and especially as you're headhunting when you're a big corporation that everybody really kind of gets scared of when you start making a lot of money, people started noticing this man just growing and doing well. The growth caught wind of nearly everyone in the automotive industry, including the cool and sleek Renault at the time, who would bring him on to become the executive vice president of Renault at 30 years old. And as if that's not skilled enough, this now international fugitive, which is getting to the punchline a little bit early, he would then be the one that bridged the Nissan-Renault alliance, taking on the chief operating officer position of Nissan while retaining his executive vice president role at Renault. After Y2K, this man became CEO of Nissan. 4 years later, he took on Renault. This dude had so much in such a short period of time between Michelin, Renault, and Nissan. It was astounding. And when talking about somebody who really knew how to play chess, Carlos was one of those people. The man was smart, and he was really good at taking on business acquisitions. And while some would say he was a bit cruel in his unorthodox methods of turning businesses around, it did unfortunately work. In early 2000s, Nissan wasn't really in good shape by any means, and because he didn't follow the typical mantra of Japanese business practices while retaining employee workforce, which is something that's very well known in the Japanese culture, he ended up laying off tens of thousands of jobs, adjusting facilities and factories, and squeezing literally every penny he possibly could from the operation to turn Nissan from a company that was on the brink, literal weeks away from bankruptcy, to growing nearly 250% in what seemed like just a few short weeks. Again, people did not really like him. They're kind of scared of him because he did that, like a lot. And one of the last moves he would make would then be his chairman acquisition of Mitsubishi Motors in late 2016. Another company on the brink of disaster, Carlos was a smart dude. He kind of just swooped in and would just be like, hey, I can help you, but we're gonna need a little bit of a partnership going on. He would go off to win some of the most notorious business awards in the world by doing this mentality and growing and growing and growing and never really shaking any workload off. He would get Businessman of the Year from Fortune, all right? A non-Japanese business leader to earn the Blue Ribbon Medal of Japan. Like from Japan's emperor, all right? In 2006, he became a knight commander of the British Empire, which is like one below an actual knight. He was like the unofficial, not known version of Elon Musk, pretty much, okay? But when it all came to an odd and weird halt was a year after he stepped down from Nissan in 2017. This was just a few short years ago. 2018 would be the year that he'd be met after he got off of his private jet plane. He didn't know when he'd be back again because there were Japanese authorities waiting there for him. Haul his ass to jail, all right? This was in February. They claimed that the man who owned nearly 3 multi-billion-dollar automotive industry giants had conducted financial misconduct. Here's where it actually gets weird. While Nissan was accused of underreporting around $43 million in salary to Carlos and another $16 million in personal losses redirected to the company versus personal taxes that Carlos was supposed to be paying according to the statement, Carlos felt he was being sabotaged. He felt like the people were out to get him, that it was not because any misconduct, but only because people at Nissan wanted to see him out. And there was no doubt to consider when your nickname in the factories was Le Cost Killer, all right? I mean, it's not necessarily the name you want to be associated with, which also meant removing jobs. And while it was all pretty much subjective at the time, and he said, she said, the Japanese government and Carlos's lawyer began getting into discussions on where exactly the facts were in this case. It was something that was a little bit weird for everyone, and it came almost out of nowhere back a few years ago because they just yanked his ass off to jail. Now everybody was asking questions. The Japanese government is a little bit different when it comes to prosecution, for better or for worse. Whether in the United States, where most people just blow up on social media, they create hashtags, assume everyone is guilty, and by the time it's determined that the person wasn't guilty, everybody's on to the next thing, and they really don't actually care if the person was guilty or not, because it makes way more sense to just assume that everybody's guilty. In Japan, it's a little bit more of a mental game, all right? Those accused of such things like Carlos are usually just subjugated to isolation, where the case is processed, but they don't really allow the person that's being trialed to talk to anyone, to really go anywhere, to really do anything, like talk to no one, pretty much complete isolation from the outside world, including his very own wife. And the goal is just to essentially try to come up with the case before the person even knows what's going to happen to them. Carlos would get out of jail on bail, which was pretty intense and a rarity for even the Japanese government, without releasing a confession, which was really weird. And when he did leave, he was trying to hide as a normal worker as to not raise any media suspicion. It's a really funny picture if you haven't seen it, but it didn't work because everybody was there waiting for him to come out, which is actually hilarious. He'd then be hauled off to jail again and again and a few more times. As random items and misconduct was being brought forth in hopes to get Carlos to confess, they'd let him out and then they pull him back to jail. Then he'd go on bail. Then he'd come back out and then they pull him back in and then he'd go on jail. So Carlos did the exact opposite, all right? He was getting pulled back in and out so many times, he decided to just Mission Impossible his own ass out of Japan. All right, there's a few stories on how he escaped. He was in his penthouse in Japan and he just wasn't there one day. Some say it was because he hired a Georgian band. They came to play with them and he snuck out an equipment case, or he did just walk out, according to Carlos and Carlos's lawyer team. But maybe he Batmaned out of a window with a cape. Nobody really knows. Whatever it was, he got out. He jumped on a bullet train to Osaka and he met up with privately hired contractors, all right, who have experience in extracting people from countries to get him out of Japan. They then put him in a slightly bigger box from the box that apparently he left from his apartment in, snuck him through the Kansai International Airport, not the wheels, and because they couldn't screen oversized luggage, they just put him on a private jet. And then they paid people in their stop in Turkey and then made his way to Lebanon, where he had been from, where he'd be safe from extradition and from the eyes of the Japanese government. Because Lebanon, he moved there, he was born there, he's got citizenship there, pretty much good to go. And to just give it a little bit more of the Hollywood sauce, him and his family are now residing in the home in Lebanon that was previously purchased by Nissan for Carlos, all right? Nissan, the moment this whole thing happened, Nissan cut ties like just the redheaded stepchild. They just didn't want nothing to do with them, all right? But Carlos then took over the house and they tried to evict him and he just won't leave. He's released statements accusing his adversaries for the actions of the Japanese government, claiming they want him to make a confession versus providing any substantial evidence that he had any major wrongdoing. On top of that, Turkey is just trying to slap as many people around as humanly possible because they had to go through Turkey to get to Lebanon. Turkey's turning to try and red card his ass in Lebanon, but Lebanon doesn't really mind Carlos. They gave him a stamp with his face on it. Japan man is trying to arrest him and his wife. Nissan blames Carlos for all the poor misconduct, and apparently Nissan is just God's green gift to earth now. And Renault got quiet. Renault didn't really switch sides or anything like that. They did allow him to resign, but they never really fired him. And Mitsubishi is just trying to make cool sports cars, a poopy SUV. Not really sure what Mitsubishi's up to, honestly. Everybody's over here, Mitsubishi just seems to be over here. A man that was once quite literally on top of the world in like the automotive industry became an international fugitive literally in a matter of days. And still is, actually. Whether he's in the wrong or not, it's still something that not many people know because he just keeps saying it wasn't him from Lebanon, sitting there, not arrested. We just have to see how it unfolds. But this man literally was on top of the world and in a matter of days decided to go become an international fugitive. But what do you think? Is this the classic story of someone who finally got caught skimming off the top, or is it a coup d'etat? Let us know what you think and what you'd like us to talk about next. And if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension, be sure to hit us up over at fitmentindustries.com where we literally have it all, including vehicles, wheels, tires, and suspension for your Nissan, Renault, or Mitsubishi. I'm Alex from Fitment Industries, and we will see you later. Peace.